Hi, this is Chris Ammon, and this presentation is about understanding classroom community and diversity challenges, and specifically I'll be talking about some socioeconomic challenges. One thing that is true is that classrooms are increasingly diverse. With the passage of No Child Left Behind, you have students with special needs being mainstreamed into the classroom, and certainly the immigration population, maybe around the country, is certainly here in Fairfax County, is growing, and that brings with it different cultures, different languages, and certainly different socioeconomic status. For example, my family's in the Jeb Stuart High School pyramid in Fairfax County, where 2/3 of the students are second language learners, and the students come from 70 different countries. 19% of this country's school-based population comes from immigrant families, and Mystery and all have found that immigrant population is more likely to be represented amongst the poor population. Some other stats about socioeconomic status affecting learning. Students from lower socioeconomic status, they develop skills more slowly. They actually ultimately have lower academic achievement as compared to students with higher socioeconomic status. And ultimately, you also have students that come from lower socioeconomic status that have some learning-related behavior problems. So if you're thinking classroom management, you could see how that could really affect your classroom. Also critical here is that because of these struggles these students are having, we're losing students. You have a dropout rate that's 10 times greater than that of families from a higher socioeconomic status. And that continues, actually, believe it or not, into college. So you can have a student who successfully completes high school and moves into college, but they still have this feeling that they don't belong, and it leads to dropping out even at the college level. So how does that feel to be that student? I think this is something we have to keep in mind as teachers. There's a lot of statistics about it, but what's that like for a student? The same Mystery et al. Study did look at that, and they said that this feeling of economic stress that these students can feel, it can influence their well-being, their physical and mental health, and even their goal setting, just like that quote about college dropout indicated. What they want to do with their future can be affected by those feelings of the economic stress of coming from a lower socioeconomic status. So as educators, I guess the question is, what can we do? I think one of the best things we can do is what Mr. Rostagi, if I'm saying his name correctly, what he advised us on Saturday, and that's that we need to get to know our kids. I think we can't assume a sameness in our classrooms, maybe the sameness that I experienced when I was a student 25, 30 years ago. We can't assume that they're seeing the latest movies, that they celebrate the same American cultures that we do. Do they know the meanings of the holidays that are celebrated in North America? Do they know our politics over the last 12 or 15 years? Or even the history of our country? You know, our immigrant families, do they know what July 4th means to us here in this country, right? And so we have to get to know each student as a unique individual and realize that they have different things impacting their lives. They have different homes lives. What kind of resources do they have in their life? And I don't just mean technology, but let's talk about, do their parents speak English? Do they have books in their house? Do they have a quiet place to study? What's their background? What are the expectations of getting an education in their family? So I think there's a lot for us to keep in mind and not just think of the student in our classroom, but what else is impacting that student's life. So I think with that in mind, what I would like to do is give my students sort of a way to celebrate their differences, and actually, and even discuss the different cultures and the diversity in our classroom as a way for us to learn from each other. But there's three things that I hope to give my students. One is to get to know them enough that I can develop personal mastery goals for each of them, to give them a reason to feel connected to the class, to find some relevance for them, and for them to feel some success, that they're achieving something in the classroom. Secondly, I hope to be an advocate for them. My sister is a teacher in a middle school in Fairfax County and recently told me a story where she has some special needs students in her class, and they weren't disruptive or anything like that, but she could tell they weren't really getting enough out of the class as she was trying to teach to the whole class. She just didn't feel like she was giving them uh, sort of the lesson or the activities that would be beneficial to them. And so she went to the administration and kind of lobbied to get some help in her classroom so these kids could get more out of the lesson. And I think that's a great example of how we can be advocates for our students. And finally, I hope to give my students a reason to stay. If that dropout statistic, if that's true, right, if that's something that we need to be thinking about as teachers, then I think we need to be thinking about ways to keep students engaged in the class so they don't leave. Because ultimately, I looked at this research and I saw reasons for why education was important to this country, right? It might close the income gap. It might improve our economy as a whole. But I think a teacher in a classroom, what we see are the students. And so it might be too easy to get caught up in those larger picture statistics when really what we should be thinking about is our students and how can we keep them engaged and get them successful and give them an opportunity to feel welcome and for them to achieve some success in school. So I appreciate you listening. If you have any comments or questions, you can find me on Twitter or at this email address, and I'll leave you with my references and the credits for the slides and the photos.